Hi, so let's do swimsuit sample and buyback, chapter 4. We're departing from the swimsuit sample of chapter 2 in the Simchi-levi book, so we're still working with a retailer and a manufacturer. Now, let's add some information. We're still dealing with the swimsuit which is sold at regular price, $125 per unit, and the wholesale price paid by the retailer is still $80 per unit, and we have a salvage value of $20 for any unsold swimsuit. Now, the manufacturer, let's assume they have the fixed production cost of $100,000 and they have a variable production cost of $35 per unit. So now the retailer marginal profit is the same as the marginal profit of the manufacturer. They both have 45 as a margin because the swimsuit is sold at 125 but cost the retail 80. The swimsuit is sold from the manufacturer to the retailer at 80 and they have a variable production cost of 35. Now, important here to remember is that the retailer's marginal profit for selling a unit during the season, $45, is smaller than the marginal loss, which is $60 associated with each unit sold at the end of the season to discount stores. So, as we know from before, if the marginal loss is higher than the marginal profit, we will order less than the expected demand. And the expected demand was 13,000, but we are actually ordering 12,000. That's where we have the optimal ordering quantity. So this gives us 12,000 at an average profit of 474,000 for the retailer. If the retailer places this order, the manufacturer's profit is 12,000 units sold at 80 each with a 35 or variable cost minus the fixed cost of 100,000, total profit of $440,000. So what can we do to improve this? We have a total supply chain profit here of $914,000. Is there a way we can improve both the retailer and the manufacturer profit? As we're going to see, there actually is one way. We're going to look at buyback contracts. So what we have here is the same sample as we did in chapter 2, but we have made some small changes. The fixed cost is no longer with the retailer, so the retailer's cost is going to be the production quantity times 80. So what the retailer buys from the manufacturer times 80. So that means that regardless of how much we're selling, the cost remains the same across columns because the cost for the retailer is only depending on how much they're ordering. The revenue depends on the sales scenario. So if we order 8,000 and we sell 8,000, then simply put, we will have 8,000 sold at 125 each, and there's going to be no salvage value because there's going to be no salvage revenue because we sold everything at full price. If we're producing 12,000 here, but we're only selling 8,000 at regular price, then we will have 12,000 times 125 plus the production quantity 12,000 minus the sold at full price. That will be 12,000 minus 8,000. So 4,000 times the salvage value. We did not hard code the salvage value into the field here, but rather we have this field here so we can dynamically change the salvage value. So finally, the profit matrix. The profit matrix is depending on both. We have the cost and we have the revenue. So we'll take the revenue minus the cost to have an expected profit. And here we are using the probabilities given here to get an expected profit. So as we can see, we get the highest expected profit at 12,000 here. At the same quantity, the manufacturer is expected to have 440,000 in expected profit. As we can see, the manufacturer makes more money the more the retailer orders. So let's see if we actually add some information here. We introduce a buyback cost. So for every unsold unit that the retailer has, instead of getting only salvage value of 20, the manufacturer now buys back at a buyback price of 55. Let's see how that affects the optimal quantity for the distributor. So we change here. So what we will get is a buyback value instead, and the buyback value is 55. What happens now is that the marginal profit is 45, because 125 minus 80 is 45. That's the marginal profit. Whereas the marginal loss is 80 minus 55 that the manufacturer buys back the swimsuits at. So we will have a marginal loss of 35. When the marginal profit is higher than the marginal loss, it's actually more beneficial for us to order a higher quantity here. So we'll actually order 14,000. The expected demand is around 13,000. And we order 14,000 to get the highest expected profit. So this will of course change the expected profit of the manufacturer. What's going to happen? Well, let's first consider that we had this graph here. We first need to consider the matrix that shows how many units are not sold. So if we're looking at 14,000, that means a probability of 11% of 6,000 unsold units. We have a probability of 11% of 4,000 unsold units, and a probability of 28% of 2,000 unsold units. Then for the other demand quantities, everything will be sold at full price, and the manufacturer will not buy anything back. So we can make a little matrix here. We should have these costs here. Let's do it like this, because we need to calculate what will these buyback contracts cost. So first of all, we need to consider 14,000 units. We need to first consider the cost for the buyback, and then the manufacturer will get the salvage value, because the manufacturer, everything that they buy back at 55, they will then sell at 20. Salvage. So what happens is we have the buyback cost. The buyback cost in the case of 8,000 sold at regular price will be 14,000, which is this one here, minus what we sold at full price, which is this one. That will give us 6,000 units, and those 6,000 units, we have to pay them. We have to pay the retailer. We have to pay 55 for each of those. So we multiply this with the buyback price. 330,000, that's the buyback cost if this scenario happens. The chance of that happening is 11%. So we multiply this expected cost with 11%. So we have 36,300, and we have an expected salvage value from this, which is the 6,000 again. So I'm not just gonna write it again. 6,000 are for the unsold, and we get 20 for each of those. So it's an expected salvage value of this one is 11% times this salvage. So the extra cost here, the extra cost of this case is this one minus this one. So we're expecting an extra cost of 23,000. So that we are reducing the profit by 23,000 in this scenario. In this scenario, we will have a buyback cost. Let's see, Q51. We can actually, if we mark this one, with the dollar signs, we can copy the formula. So let's copy it. It's 53. So in this case, we sell 10,000 at regular price. We will have 4,000 that will be billed from the retailer with 55 each. So we will have again an expected cost for the buyback. We will have salvage again as well. And the salvage in this case is going to be, we have the 4,000 units times salvage value 20. Same thing here, we have 2,000 units extra at 20 salvage value. We should copy this formula as well. T52. And this one is, yes, this one is of course higher, the expected extra cost here, because the probability of 12,000 is much higher than the probability of these others. So that means that we get 28% likelihood of the 12,000 times the buyback cost. So, and the expected salvage here, we have an expected salvage of 4,000 times, we had the, so we had an expected salvage of 80,000 times the probability, and here it is, and we have the same thing for the expected salvage of the 12,000 scenario. So all in all, we get these impact on the profit of the manufacturer from the buyback contract. If we summarize this, so we summarize these three numbers here, we will get 58,000. So it's a negative number, and that's how much it will impact. So the new profit at 14,000 is this one minus this number here. Oh, that was a minus, sorry. We should add a plus here instead. So, and the new sum here is going to be, actually it's not going to be sum, it's going to be distributor plus manufacturer's new profit, 989. New. So what we saw here was that both the distributor raised their profit from 474,000 to 517,000. the manufacturer raised their expected profit from 440 to 471,000. So we raised the total supply chain profit from roughly above 900,000 to 989,000. So what we saw here was that both were winning on this deal. So adding together this, we actually get that with a buyback contract, the manufacturer and retailer are meeting each other at a higher level. So we can see with the buyback contract, it's actually more profitable for both the retailer and manufacturer if the retailer orders more. So